Welcome back to the second part of the third month session. I'm sure you would have enjoyed the written material content on limbic imprints. But prior to actually going into the depths of this part of the session, we request you to go through the second part of Bruce Lipton's work on nature, nurture and power of love, available on YouTube, and also the power of visualization by Professor Greg Braden, which is available on the YouTube. Right. Let us first understand what Professor Bruce Lipton is trying to get at. First, he says scientifically, if you're established in a positive emotion of love, you can contribute significantly to the intelligence, the growth, and the immunity of the baby. He then goes on to perception in the mother, having a bearing in the baby as the perception of the parents contribute to the maternal environment, and the maternal environment is actually the fetal environment, which has a direct action on the baby in terms of its genetic expression. This is what we call as epigenesis. What science speaks of as perception is nothing but relating from our thought patterns, which largely influence our actions and decision making. Before we dwell deeper into a clearer understanding of patterns or biomemories, as we can also call them, we need to know that the consciousness enters into the baby's body only at the time of birthing. It is not present in the womb, as a single body cannot have two consciousness inside. Till the consciousness or the soul claims the body of the baby is only an extension of the mother's life. The second important Vedic truth is that consciousness chooses the body based on the frequency of the body and itself. The frequency of the biomemories in the body of the baby should tune in to match that of the consciousness. Hence, though directly the parents cannot choose the baby, indirectly they can prepare the body of the baby with as little or no patterns whatsoever to attract a soul of higher intelligence. So we can actually bring into our lives a baby we visualize, just as the rishis in the Vedic age did. Let us understand how to do it. The mother not only provides nutrition to the baby, but also in her awareness and unawareness instills certain cellular memories or limbic imprints, as we scientifically term, or the biomemories as we understand per the Vedic tradition. This is what is instilled into the body of the baby, as mentioned earlier. These are engraved memories which have mostly negative emotions stemming up from the powerless space of incompletion in the mother and the father when they are in a conflict situation. A conflict situation happens only when one feels powerless about oneself. I will be running through this again. We have touched base with this in the earlier session, but to get a clearer understanding, we will be running through this again, because this is what would form the base material content of the worksheet which we will be working on. A conflict situation happens only when one feels powerless about oneself. Normally, the idea you project to yourself inside you about you is always less than what you are. I repeat, normally the idea you project to yourself inside you about you is always less than what you are. This is so because of certain patterns within us. Patterns, as we understand them to be, is an improper cognition which we have about ourselves, and this happened to us when we were very young. The incident which happened did not fulfill our expectation and left us in a state of mind with an improper cognition about life and ourselves. This is the time when we first experienced a state of powerlessness and gave powerless words to ourselves like, I am lonely, I am afraid, I am trapped, I am guilty. This is a root pattern. A root pattern can happen in the womb, during birthing, and the first 6 to 7 years of life, till the child develops an intellectual capacity to understand a situation and handle it, analyze it primarily. This in scientific terms is the limbic imprint as given in the reference material. The memory of this incident gets lodged within us in our deep unconsciousness, and whenever we are faced with conflict situation, it is these powerless words which are given by us to us. The pattern playing in this situation is a conflicting thought pattern. In time, we begin to believe that this is what we are, and all our decisions and actions come only from that powerless idea that we have about ourselves. The powerless words we give to ourselves is a root pattern, and when it is repeated again and again in the conflict situations which happen in life, becomes the conflicting thought pattern. In our unawareness, because we are so used to this pattern, we instill these words also into our baby when we are faced with a conflict. So this is how a pattern gets sown into the baby's body by both the parents. Conflict situation in the father also instill conflict thought patterns into the baby's body. This is what the second video on power of visualization gives us an idea about. It showed that there is this is what the second video of power of visualization showed. There is a very powerful scientific evidence to prove that emotions in an individual are present in the DNA, which has been obtained from the individual but kept separately in another room. The polygraph recording of the emotion undergone in the individual and that of the DNA in the room were identical, and this was proof enough to say that the baby which contains the DNA material will also be affected by the father's conflicting thought pattern. It is not necessary that the child be connected physically or bodily with the person concerned. The DNA material kept in a separate room was disconnected from the individual, but yet it had a similar emotional wave recorded on the polygraph. The presence of such patterns inside a baby's body which are negative can only attract a soul of low consciousness to itself. Ultimately, when the baby is born and grows up, it will also respond to life from these patterns with unawareness. Since the impact of these powerless words are so very detrimental to the baby, we need to address this issue particularly in the parents and as much as possible complete with these patterns to prevent them from being lodged into the baby. Understand an incompletion to be a hangover of the past which comes in the way of us relating with life completely in the present. This hangover constantly influences our decision making and actions and practically drives us around. It is important to be absolutely aware of the existence of such pattern, and that is what we will be addressing shortly. A conflict situation in our life and identifying the conflicting thought pattern in us. Once the couple know their conflicting thought patterns, they also realize that the conflict between both of them, that is between the husband and the wife, arises only from their patterns, and they work on each other's patterns to remove them. This is what brings them closer to one another. They open themselves to each other from an understanding that they can be of help to the other. Primarily, it is looking at the larger perspective, trying to get a beautiful baby for themselves and simultaneously working on transforming each other. How do we analyze a conflict situation? Now, relive a recent conflict situation in your life. I repeat, relive a recent conflict situation in your life without editing anything, as emotional as it was when it hit you for the first time. At that moment of time, when you're running through and reliving this conflict situation, when you feel deeply powerless, exactly see the words that you give to yourself, which is the idea that you have about you. I am guilty, I am lonely, I am trapped, I am scared, I feel like dying, I feel like running away. All these are words that you give to yourself. This is mamakara. The other person in the conflict situation is life. In this situation, what is the idea you have about life? Life cheats me, life exploits me, life does not understand me, etc. And this is the swa anyakara. How did you react in this situation? How did you respond? I ran away, I cried, I got angry, I acted responsibly and completed my job. All this is the ahankara. So this needs to be done as an exercise. Analysis of conflict situations puts us in constant awareness about the powerless words we give to ourselves. Now, with this understanding, we will introduce you to what is your birthright. You have been bestowed with 4 powers by existence itself: the power of word, the power of thinking, the power of feeling and living. Let's come down to what is the power of words as our understanding is. Whatever words you utter to yourself or others will see its fulfillment automatically if it comes from a space of completion and integrity. Integrity, or as we call it, as sampurti in Sanskrit. This is the first tattva or the first Vedic truth, which is you fulfilling the word and the thought you give to yourself and to others, and experiencing a state of purnatva or completion with yourself and with life. I repeat, integrity or sampurti is the first Vedic tattva, which is you fulfilling the word and the thought that you give to yourself and to others, and experiencing a state of purnatva or completion with yourself and with life. Fulfilling is keeping up the words and thoughts you have given to you and others, whereas completing is when you are unable to fulfill, and so you complete with yourself and others that you cannot keep up the words and thoughts, and so you are dropping them consciously. What happens with this is that every unfulfilled word given to you or others remains as a hangover within, and your inner space is incomplete with all these unfulfilled words and promises. The absence of such a hangover within makes you relate with a beautiful inner space, devoid of incompletions. This is the period of time when for the first time you start relating with you, the time when you start appreciating your inner space. Once we analyze the conflict issues next session, we will teach you the science of completion, and from that to understand how expression of power of words happens when you start living integrity.